Welcome to Happeo Unmuted, the podcast where we speak openly about what it really takes to connect people at work. From internal comms and knowledge sharing to the messiness of change and the rise of AI, we go beyond best practices to unpack what's working, what's not, and what's worth rethinking. Our host, Jesse Bourgeault-Trickey, has spent over 10 years in internal comms, building and launching intranets for organizations in telecoms and finance. He now leads client services at Happeo, where he's helped over 120 businesses across the globe create and grow engaging digital workplaces that drive organizational goals and objectives. If you care about how people in your organization share, learn, and adapt, this is your show. And if you're looking for a modern digital HQ, you can find us at happeo.com.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Unmuted. I'm your host, Jesse Bourgeault-Trickey. In today's episode, we're talking with Regine Nelson. Regine is an internal communications and employee engagement leader with over 15 years of experience helping organizations build connected, inclusive, and purpose-driven cultures. At Couchbase, she drives global communication strategies that align people, performance, and values across hybrid and distributed teams. She is passionate about using communication to foster belonging, clarity, and trust at every level of an organization. And we're so glad she could join us for a chat. You might be as surprised as I was by the answer to her first question, and hopefully you'll learn from her insights on managing comms fatigue, why culture is at the heart of internal comms, and how she applies the SMART brevity method. Thanks for joining, Regine.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here with you on Happeo Unmuted.
Nice. Yeah, so today, let's jump in maybe with an unmuted moments icebreaker. So it kind of represents our first segment. So the question that I had was, what's something you've heard on a call that definitely should have been muted?
Oh my. So I was once at an organization where, you know how you have a standard virtual all hands, people dial in, typically on a platform like Zoom. And we had someone accidentally unmute themselves, as it is very easy to do. You know, a cat crosses your path and steps on the space bar, or you haphazardly press it yourself while turning or looking for something. And this person was delivering some bad news to their spouse. They were serving their spouse divorce papers, and this spouse was not taking it very well. I could not move, nor IT, fast enough to mute said person. So we got probably about 20 seconds into it before we figured out where it was coming from and how to turn it off. Safe to say, it was a very embarrassing moment, but one that could easily happen to anyone. So I would suggest that you have these kinds of conversations when you're not on a work call, just in case.
Yeah, wow. That is, wow. I don't think I've ever heard anything like that before. I imagine there was probably some sort of changes that happened at the org as a result of the outcome.
Yes, it sure was. And I haven't heard anything like that since. But yes, now we turn on the mute everyone upon entry into the meetings. And now we also have some very fast IT hands, 2 guys working in tangent at this particular organization in the event that we have that. But of course, you know, there's now a webinar that you can implement as well. And therefore, no one can speak except for the presenters. So I've implemented that as well for larger meetings.
I guess it's going to show like you should really sort of put the right resources behind these sort of big staff connection points where everybody's going to be present. You want to make sure that these things move nice and seamlessly. In the event of some sort of, you know, strange occurrence like that, you've got all the people you need there to kind of make things happen. So
exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Holy moly. I can only imagine. So the other one that it kind of brings us into maybe our next segment, which we were thinking about, like the work behind the work that you do. And so one of the ones that we had here was, what's a small internal change you've made that has had a surprisingly big impact?
Yeah, I would say that we've seen a shift towards more concise and simplistic communications. And so particularly at my organization, Couchbase, we've sort of switched to the SMART brevity framework, where you really talk about what is happening, why is it happening now, and what's in it for the person. If you can answer those specific 3 questions in 3 sentences, then that information will be more likely accessible and reviewed by the employees, instead of sending an essay, if you will. And, you know, my goodness, forbid that it is also a War and Peace novel.
Yeah, it's really interesting, that idea that you're sort of creating a promise for the audience at that point, right? Like if you do get something from somebody, you can kind of expect it to be like this, or you'll know that it'll only take you this long to kind of get through it. How was that sort of received at the organization? Like I imagine there's a lot of people who are happy there, but from like a change perspective, for those who are maybe more resistant, what did that look like?
Yeah, no, the change has been very well received. If we have major changes that require step-by-step changes, then we do include an FAQ with that particular document, so that way people can access more information if they need to. But the bulk of the communication really answers those main 3 questions, and additional details you can find elsewhere. We do have people that want to get into the nitty-gritty, and so the FAQ is something that we can use to provide them with that additional detail.
Nice. Okay. Yep. Have you been able to kind of see like the adoption rate or anything like that? Do you have any kind of
Oh,
measures?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We've seen others implement it as well. The
Mhm.
comms that come from our senior leadership team have been adapted into that smart brevity style. And the
Yeah.
unique feature is that we've also seen it appear in our meetings as well. So team meetings, department meetings have adopted that style, and it allows for more Q&A at the end of their, whether it be a 45-minute or 30-minute meeting with their teams.
Yeah. Right on. Nice. And then, so I guess maybe the follow-up there is like, how do you define success or successful communications in a world of chaos, noise, and 800 Slack channels?
So what's funny about that is I too am in the realm where we have many Slack channels. And there's a reason for that, right? You have Slack channels to appease the different audiences that may interact in one way or another. And so I think for us, right, with those channels, if it's something super important, we'll cross-functionally post those smart brevity messages, so that way people are hitting that message multiple times. They say it takes a human person seeing a message 7 to 8 times before it sticks or creates change. And so for us, effective comms looks like it tells you, it answers those 3 questions, right? What is happening? Why is it happening now? And who it's for? And if there's an action tied to that, really tracking and measuring how many of our team members have completed that required or suggested action. And then
Right.
also, how are they communicating about it as well, if we need a cascade, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's sort of those like 2 forms of measurement around like awareness, so that you can kind of get a sense of if they're excited or ready for the change. But then there's also that adoption of behavior, or like following the call to action.
Exactly.
Do you find that you've had a lot of success sort of being able to navigate having both of those measurements going? And do you kind of feel like you got the right resources for that?
I mean, we can always have improved resources, right? With unlimited time and budget, oh my goodness, I would build you a new planet, right?
Yeah.
In light of not having all of those additional resources, the incremental changes that we made have been established, and they are gaining a lot of traction within the organization. So I would say that if we had better tools, we could probably implement a little bit more in that
Mhm.
space. But for where we're at right now, it's sufficient.
Right. Is it the Benevity side of things that you're measuring in, or are you using Slack to measure? Like, what is
So
that
we're
sort of?
using Slack to
Mhm.
measure at this moment, and we're getting ready to implement a tool that's going to really let us know from an engagement perspective how long employees are staying on a specific page or within a certain area of content as well, and what's really important. At our organization, the number of tickets that we get about a specific topic or change lets us know how well the change was communicated. Because
Right.
if you send a message that says, okay, today is the last day with this specific tool, we're onboarding a new tool, and the day that that new tool gets onboarded, if you get 20 messages or tickets that say, my login doesn't work for XYZ, we know that, we can tell you where these teams are. Was it a time zone delay or some sort of other deficiency in our communication? Because we are a global organization as well.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting. Like I always try to explain internal comms to people who are less familiar with being able to drive particular behaviors. And so that whole measurement of, what's the next step, or did they do the thing that we asked them to do?
Exactly.
And just having those measurements is sort of critical for ROI. So
Mhm.
yeah, great. And so moving on from there, it sort of translates into this idea of technology. But we were thinking about today's topics, what's going on in the news and all that stuff. And so technology, AI in the future, kind of trying to avoid the hype as far as the way to think about it, but or even just discuss the idea or the concept of the hype behind it. One of the questions we wanted to ask was sort of along the lines of like, do you think tools can fix culture? Because I know there's been a lot of discussion, especially at leadership levels and things like that around what to sort of introduce. What are they introducing it for? What's the sort of ROI as far as the output of those tools? So what do you think about that? Like we're thinking, like, do you think the tools can fix culture, or is that just kind of a convenient excuse for maybe more people effort across the organization, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Can I be frank with you, Jesse?
we prefer that you are. So yeah,
So this is going to be a question that really helps people to challenge their assumptions about accountability. And I think culture is a people problem. It is a person problem. It is a relation problem. And I don't think tools in and of themselves will solve it holistically. I think that they can enhance your culture, that they can provide minor improvements to your culture. But at the end of the day, the main denominator for culture is trust, right? And so tools can't help you to create trust. That's through the relationships. That's through the people within your organization. And so while I see there are a lot of tools coming out there that are claiming to be able to help improve your culture, et cetera, it's all going to boil down to the trust that your people have with each other and that culture that comes out of that trust. So, and to touch upon, your AI, I mean, my gosh, I love AI and what it can do, but even a lot of the tools today, AI is sort of a check. We have AI in our instance, but it's not really providing meaningful value outside of what you could already request from a free version of ChatGPT, for example. So I think that we really need to look at what we want AI to do, what we want the tools to do, and how they can help to contribute to our culture in minor ways to enhance it, but not taking on the full role of improving our culture by themselves.
Right. Have you seen any kind of sort of capacity for AI to sort of help with the executive level to sort of build culture, or maybe even at a leadership level? Have you done any kind of experiments there yet, or have you sort of tried to see where that could lead?
I haven't done any experiments yet, but I have toyed with some specific tools that I have mentioned that say that, that they can provide this sort of capability. One unique tool, and I you can Google it, I won't mention the name here, but what it does is it allows you to create an AI clone of yourself. It learns your specific, way of speaking, way of typing, and then you can have it as a 24/7 ask me anything for senior leaders within your organization. I thought that was very, very interesting and a cool concept. Not something that we're ready for at Couchbase, but it is definitely something that could provide value in the future as people learn to trust AI. My whole thing with that one is if people know that it is AI communicating and not a real person, unless they are physically prompting the AI, there could be a bit of pushback from that. So I think as it becomes more pervasive, the use of AI, the use of using these type of artificial personalities and instances, I think it might be helpful in the future for sure.
Mm-hmm. Do you, at your current place, are you doing any kind of like social comms or anything like that within the organization to kind of like create interdepartmental relationships or team building or any of that kind of stuff? Do you find it mostly top down? Do you do like vertical side to side?
Yeah, I think it depends. We're a heavy department-centered organization. So I sit in people in workplace. And so the people in workplace team is the most cross-functional team that we have at the organization. HRBPs, people partners sit within that team, as well as benefits, and so does workplace. And so we work quite a bit with other orgs, but I think right now, our orgs are definitely more siloed in nature, and their communications are coming primarily from senior leaders within the organization, whether that be from their own department or from our e-staff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So as far as like culture, it's what you're kind of thinking of here is more like, relationships with leaders or being
That's
able to kind of get a sense of the vision or the mission for the organization.
that's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And we don't have any social tools at the moment in the traditional sense, right?
Sure.
To support that. I've been at other organizations where we've had tools like coffee chats, donuts, where it would pair you with somebody randomly within the organization to have a virtual coffee date with. But right now, everyone really works within their specific department. And when we have cross-functional projects that we work on, then we engage from that perspective as well. But outside of large company gatherings, whether it be in person or virtual, you're mostly working with folks that are on your immediate or level team.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I always think about either whether it's sort of the top-down culture or like the social side-to-side kind of culture. There's always a sort of need of somebody being like a gardener, essentially, right? Like somebody has to be there either planting seeds and watering, fertilizing, and all that kind of stuff.
That's right.
If you don't necessarily have that, it's pretty hard to rely on the tool to do all that work, right? So.
Exactly.
Nice. Yeah. I was thinking maybe like we could switch a little over to like a spicy takes sort of side of things. So the question we have is sort of like, finish this sentence. I know this is controversial, but ...
One thing I love about my company so much is that when we do employee surveys, my goodness, we take action upon those employee surveys. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard, they ask us what we think and then they do nothing with what we have told them. That hurts me for you. I know it hurts your employees when you don't do that, right? And, I'm a mother and I do the same thing with my children. If I ask for their feedback, what do you guys want to have for dinner? And they say they want to have chicken nuggets. And then I go and I make pasta. That's a huge letdown. Why did I ask them in the first place, right? And so I think that people should really, if you're going to ask for feedback and you're not going to do anything to it, then don't ask for feedback. Just throw the whole survey in the trash because it was pointless.
Right. Yeah, totally. I mean, even in the event that you aren't going to do necessarily what you hear, just to be able to say, like, we heard you, we thought about it, given this information that we also have that you may not be having access to, we made this decision, right?
Yeah.
It's a common sort of topic that I like to bring up with a lot of the clients that I help out with, just to think about the idea of that feedback loop and sort of using these initial surveys as sort of an introduction of the concept at the organization. And if you are able to kind of speak to it and say, I heard you, this is what we're going to do, or this is what we did. Thank you so much, everybody who sort of contributed to that survey. Just makes all the difference. And it opens the door to not having to have this bulky sort of giant survey with so many questions. You could potentially start doing little pulse check-ins and stuff like that, where people are much more likely to kind of jump in. You ever hear the term like survey fatigue? Yeah.
Yes. Thankfully, we don't have that here at Couchbase. We're very, very intentional in how we present our employees with surveys and obviously what we do with the surveys after they've been completed. But I also think that, along with surveys are not the only time to ask for feedback, right? From your employees and your team members. I love the always on feedback perspective, right? Where people can give feedback at any time. And again, those may not be acted upon because the always on feedback comes in spurts, right? So it's sometimes hard to formulate some themes from that. But I think if you review those, whether it be on a monthly, a quarterly, or biannual basis, I think that will do a lot to improve your employee experience and engagement at your organization.
Yeah, that's great. I normally find like I'm always asking questions when I hear survey fatigue. It's kind of like what you mentioned in the beginning is sort of my follow-up question. Like, okay, well, how often do you tell everybody what you listened to or what you heard from that survey? Just to see if it's maybe a case of survey fatigue being related to this idea that it feels like it doesn't do anything if I fill one in, right? Yeah, that's great. I guess for the survey results that you're getting, for the always on survey results that you're getting, are you sort of centralizing those, and are you sort of then communicating out what you hear, like maybe in a quarterly basis or something like that? Like, hey, here's some highlights of what we've been hearing to sort of encourage that passive approach.
Yes, we definitely do. And that's the way that we conduct also our personal professional assessments within the company as well. We don't have a formal review process, so it's always on 360 feedback. So you can request feedback from your peers at any time, and your manager as well. But hopefully, right, as it is with your one-on-one with your manager, you should already be aware of how you're doing as a individual within the organization. And that's the same way that I feel about surveys and large company events, right? If employees are surprised at what you're telling them at an all hands, or what you found on the surveys that you've done, then there's a problem, because there should have been some sort of inkling of what was happening, and the surveys should not be the first time that you discover that there's a problem.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting, right? Like sometimes people are just, their hands are over their ears, like, I'd rather not know this sort of thing. But the way that I think about it with internal comms is you are sort of the canary in the coal mine. Like, you're the ones to hear it first, and being able to know that and being able to address those things in a sort of controlled or public way can make all the difference of sort of letting things go and seeing it kind of like create more problems down the road. So just having those kinds of outreach pieces can be so important.
Yeah. And you mentioned fatigue. So I'll talk a little bit about another type of fatigue. And it's so interesting, right? So survey fatigue is real, and so is change fatigue. Change is constant, right? In your personal life, in your professional life, at work, there's always something changing. And I think that we have to apply some, and I hate to bring this up, but the Steve Jobs and the Mark Zuckerberg method, right? What are some things that you can do? They choose their clothes, right? What they wear, so they can reduce that decision fatigue in terms of decisions and change, right? So if you know that you're going to wear everyday jeans, that's one less change that you need to worry about on a day-to-day basis. How can we implement that same thing with organizations as well? And one thing that we do is we have a calendar of annual events, so employees can understand, okay, we know that in January, this is what we typically do. In February, this is what we typically do. So that it's not a surprise, and it's not okay, this week is Mental Health Awareness Week. You already knew that because it was on the calendar and we talked about it, of what was coming up next month, right? So having regular systematic things that employees can look forward to reduce that change or that information fatigue is going to be super important.
Yeah, it's really great that you kind of start to break down these different types of fatigue, and it allows you to be more sort of thoughtful around, like, what is your solution going to be as far as introducing that, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, every organization is going to be a little bit different, but just sort of taking out the guesswork of what's coming up. I guess there's a lot of different ways in which communications can kind of handle some of that for the other users or the other members of the organization, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's great. Good point. Maybe we'll transition a little bit to the kind of end of the call here, but I was just thinking, like kind of the idea of thinking a little bit more about yourself and your role in the organization, and also just sort of like your life and work balance sort of thing. But what's one principle or philosophy you try to live by in your work?
Gosh, I try to implement systems as much as possible, right? Repeatable systems and processes, just because, I am a communicator. I adapt pretty well to change, but I have to work on that. I'm a neurodivergent person. I have ADHD. And so for most people who have ADHD, change and transition can be very jarring and difficult, right? You're so hyper-focused on one thing that you really don't want to change to the next task unless you have something to help you smoothly transition into that. And so I do that for myself, but I also do that for the comms that I do, right? So I'm not going to send out multiple comms in one day, having people go, okay, now this change, okay, now that change, and volley here and volley there, right? That's disorienting for me as a divergent person. And it's super disorienting for someone who has a normal functioning brain, right, if you will. And so I try to really limit that for individuals. So be super intentional, but also simplify with the systems that I have. And so that, I mean, I've got 3 kids in 18 months. So I had to have systems. Otherwise, I would lose my mind, Jesse.
Yeah, wow. You mentioned something there about like the systems, and I was kind of curious if you do currently have processes around like intake processes for any kind of like comms requests, stuff like that. Maybe if you could describe what that might look like.
Yeah.
Or the other side of it is a comms calendar, like if you're able to kind of provide a little bit of a heads up to the other communicators of the organization, or maybe leadership about like what's coming. Maybe not as broadly as like an all staff calendar.
Yeah. So 2 things from there. So I'll go at the macro and then I'll go at the micro level. So at the macro level, as I explained, we do have a calendar of annual events. The calendar of annual events not only showcases our all hands, but any company trainings that we have. So annual security and compliance training, et cetera, including some of our company observances. We do have Couchbase Culture and Diversity Month in October. Now, I do meet with e-staff on a monthly basis in order to give them a heads up of, hey, remember these things are coming up. Here are the comms that are going to be going out regarding these specific items, right? And with the team of other communicators that are within the organization, while I lead internal comms and employee engagement, I do work very, very closely with IT, who sends out regular communications, with the HR team, whether it be benefits or the workplace team, discussing what's happening. Offices are closed, et cetera. Things are happening in terms of repairs. So I work with them to create a calendar. So that way we're sending no more than 3 messages company-wide on a weekly basis. And then therefore extrapolating by department and by region, the number of comms that we send as well. So generally, we like to make it such that we only have 1 email coming from a non-leader in their organization per day.
Okay. Yep. Do you have any kind of like rules in place or any kind of governance in place to kind of keep that in check, or is it mostly like an honor system? You had to do a bit more change management?
Yeah, no, so we do have a system in place to manage that. And so I do have standing meetings on a weekly basis with the different constituents and stakeholders that I work with. And so we meet collectively once a month as a larger team to kind of plan and place where we want these comms to go. But that's sort of how we manage it. If there's anyone outside of those particular stakeholders that has some comms, they do have a form that they can fill out, because it's usually something ad hoc, one-off. We may not do it multiple times a year, et cetera. And so that's how we sort of manage that. But yeah, it's a whole system in place to keep the wheels on the bus.
Yeah. I'm also all about systems and all kinds of forms and all that kind of good stuff. Do you also have to kind of handle the measurement side of it for them, or do they have access to that? Like, do they self-serve for measurement? Do they sort of know what to do with what they learn, that kind of stuff?
Yes, so they do self-serve with their own measurement, whether it be, the number of clicks that they have on their communications, the open rates, and obviously if it's an event, then the number of attendees or responses that they have on the calendar invites or RSVPs.
Yeah. Did you find that was sort of an easy thing to do to kind of set everybody else up with their own self-measurement, or did you kind of have to push in order to get people to kind of take that extra step and see the impact of their work?
No, it was something that they had before I started.
Oh, great. Okay.
Around it in the same space so that we all were aware of what was happening and what was going on, because we have to share our internal best practices, whether it be the best time to send out an email, the format that works best. That's how we decided to adopt the SMART brevity framework, was through one of those particular sessions.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, it's great to just have that oversight and being able to kind of present that to the leadership teams. I think in a lot of organizations that are still kind of growing or becoming more mature, it's to have that realization like, oh, I didn't realize we're all sending to the same people, this many times a week. And oh, no wonder no one's reading anything. They're getting 10 emails a day and they don't know who to look at, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you do any kind of like broadcasting of the analytics that you get to like the larger group? Like, do you do any kind of internal benchmarking or anything like that?
No, not yet. But with our new tool that we're going to be launching in the next couple of months, I hope to be able to do that.
Nice. Yeah, cool. It'd be interesting to hear kind of how that goes for you and what it looks like in the end. I always get a lot of clients sort of asking me like, what's the silver bullet? Like, what's the measurement that I should be looking for and things like that. And I always have to kind of tell them like, it is going to be unique for you. There's just too many variables and you got to think about all these different what ifs and all that kind of stuff. But I find internal measurement though is a little bit better, and you're able to kind of get a sense looking like month over month and stuff like that. So
yeah, well, you mentioned something that is that I'm super passionate about, right? Looking at the measurement is one thing, right? Like how many clicks did you get? How many people attended? But understanding the impact of
right.
what you have communicated, I find to be much more valuable, because then we can directly tie it to potential revenue or profitable numbers for the organization as well.
Yeah, like do you have that sort of built into the measurement strategy today, or is it still like something you're working towards?
It's still something we're working towards, because right now, without some deeper analytics, it's hard to ascribe which specific, even if it was a communication or event or an activity over time, right, that contributed to this specific change. When we can have more correlated historical information in one platform, that will be able to show us, okay, we could see over time that this is why this impact was made. So
yeah, it's interesting, like the sort of workarounds that exist today. I'm trying to merge all these different tools together. For me, we use Google and we measure the Google file usage in addition to like the different resources or tactics that will drive people to those files and things like that. Like, are you doing any of that kind of stuff today, or is it still mostly like focused on the communication tactic itself and not necessarily the broader picture?
Yeah, mostly focused on the communication tactic. And you just mentioned something to me that I was not aware of that I could even do from a Google perspective, the understanding the engagement and the users within a file. We'll have to talk about that, because that is very interesting to me indeed.
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's one of these things that Google does where they make cool things, but they don't tell anybody and they don't show you, and that kind of thing. Even just being able to aggregate all those, the data points across all these files, I've yet to find sort of like a central database. So you kind of have to do a lot of manual work, and it seems like an area of opportunity for them, but maybe not an interest or priority right now. But it is, at least it's something that, us as communicators, we can kind of tap into that if we need it, just to be able to kind of see, like, I sent this out, I got them to go to the file, they did the action in the file, saved or made the company money. Therefore, we made or saved that money, right? We're driving that behavior. So, yeah. Great. Any other final thoughts or anything about, like, as far as your philosophy or anything you try to live by at work?
Yeah, I mean, if I were to have a tagline for work and for home, it would probably be everything, everywhere, all at once, right? And I feel that as a communicator, communications itself is like air. You don't really see it sometimes, but it is there nevertheless, right? And we're using it even when we don't think that we're using it, because communication is not simply just words that come out of your mouth, right? It's words on a page. It's your physical expression, your body posture and positioning, right? And so all of those things are communication. And I use all of those, and I'm very hypersensitive and aware, even when I'm doing an all hands in person within the organization, right? Seeing what the body language of people are. Are they seeming interested? You can collect a lot of data just by being in the room as well. And even if you can quickly scan across your Zoom or your Google Meet screen as well, provided that people have their cameras on, you can sort of measure that, right? So again, the theme of having to be everywhere and everything all at once. And then I mentioned, I'm a parent, I'm a wife, I'm an older sister, etc. And I even bring up that I've got 26 chickens, 2 of which are, roosters. And so it's a lot, right, to do, but I enjoy every moment of it. My neurodivergent brain would be super bored if I didn't have everything going on all at once.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate the time today. It was great getting to know you. Some good topics there. Maybe we'll dive into something deeper here in the future in one of our next episodes. But yeah, I really appreciate the time. I hope everybody who is listening enjoyed this as well, and we look forward to our next episodes in the future. Thanks again for your time, Regine, and all the best in the new year. Thank you so much. I'll be back anytime you need me, Jesse. All right. All right. Don't know why I said new year, but anyway, we could fix that in post. It's fine. Yeah. Well, that's it for this episode of Unmuted. If you like what you heard, don't forget to rate, review, and follow the show, and maybe pass it along to a colleague, or better yet, your leader. We all know that managing up starts with a well-timed podcast link. And hey, if your organization's still on mute when it comes to comms and knowledge, Happeo is here to help turn up the volume. Until next time, keep talking, keep listening, and whatever you do, stay unmuted. Thanks, everybody.